We are continuing our series through the book of Revelation that we call Revelation Nuggets, and we're going through chapter by chapter, looking for the nuggets of wisdom that God has placed there, looking for that blessing. God has promised a blessing for those who read and hear this book. But when we get to the middle part of the book of Revelation, it's a difficult read. Right? It's hard to read through the sections that we've been going through, because God is unleashing His wrath on the people of the earth. Now, true, these are people who have rejected God, and God is just in putting His wrath on these people. But still, as fellow human beings, it's hard for us to read about other humans going through the difficulties that God has put them through. It's kind of like when you or your spouse have to discipline your child. And you really don't want to do it. It's hard, and especially if you're watching the other parent discipline the child, it's hard. We don't like seeing a child having to be disciplined, but we know that it's for their own good, right? That the purpose of the discipline is to help them see the error of their ways and to get them to act right, to do what is right. And that's what we have to remember as we're reading through the book of Revelation, that all of this, the purpose of all of this tribulation and wrath that God is pouring out on the earth is to discipline those who have rejected God, to get them to see the error of their ways, to get them to repent and turn back to God. Well, we're in chapter 17 today, and it might get a little easier for us because now God is turning His attention, turning His wrath upon those who have led people astray, those who have led people away from God. So if you'll turn to Revelation chapter 17, we're going to be taking a look at what is referred to as Babylon the Great. And we're going to see who this refers to, what exactly or who exactly Babylon the Great is. And we're going to see some of the wrath being poured out upon Babylon the Great. So turn to Revelation 17. We'll begin with verses 1 and 2. Revelation 17, verses 1 and 2. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the judgment of the great prostitute who is seated on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed sexual immorality, and with the wine of whose sexual immorality the dwellers on earth have become drunk." Well, remember that there's a lot of symbolism in the book of Revelation, and not just in the book of Revelation, but all throughout Scripture, there is symbolism. And many, many times throughout Scripture, God uses the metaphor or the symbology of sexual immorality to call out spiritual immorality, to call out when the nation of Israel or when God's believers have turned their back on God and worshiped false gods. For example, if we look in Deuteronomy chapter 31, Deuteronomy 31, verse 16, it says, "And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, you are about to lie down with your fathers. Then this people will rise and whore among the foreign gods among them in the land that they are entering. And they will forsake me and break my covenant that I have made with them." So here, unfaithfulness, spiritual unfaithfulness, is equated to whoring. In Hosea, the whole book of Hosea is really about this topic. Here's just a few verses, a few examples. Hosea chapter 1, verse 2. Hosea chapter 1, verse 2 says, "When the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, Go, take to yourself a wife of whoredom and have children of whoredom, for the land commits great whoredom by forsaking the Lord." And then later in Hosea chapter 4, verse 12, Hosea chapter 4, verse 12, "My people inquire of a piece of wood,
and their walking staff gives them oracle. For a spirit of whoredom has led them astray, and they have left their God to play the whore. Then in the book of Ezekiel, in Ezekiel chapter 6, verse 9, Ezekiel chapter 6, verse 9, it says, "Then those of you who escape will remember me among the nations where they are carried captive, how I have become broken over their whoring heart that has departed from me, and over their eyes that go whoring after their idols. For they have been loathsome in their own sight for the evils that they have committed, for all their abominations." So again, we see spiritual unfaithfulness being equated to sexual immorality, to, we'll see here, he refers to Babylon the Great as the great prostitute. So again, it's not literal, it's speaking of spiritual unfaithfulness of the people of the world. So keep that in mind as we continue to read about Babylon the Great and this what that means. So here in Revelation 16, because she has led so many people away from God, this person that symbolizes Babylon the Great is referred to as the great prostitute. So what else does John reveal about her? Well, in the end of verse 1, John says that she is seated on many waters. And we've seen before how water a lot of times symbolizes humanity, but we don't really have to guess what he means, because in verse 15, John tells us what that means. So if you look at Revelation 17 and jump down to verse 15, it says, "And the angel said to me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and languages." So in other words, this woman in the vision has great influence over a lot of people, over multitudes and languages and nations. So this great prostitute, who we'll see as Babylon the Great, literally has worldwide influence. Remember back in chapter 13 that everyone was required to bow to the image of the beast, image of the Antichrist. You put all these pieces together, and most scholars, leading us to point 1 on your outline, most scholars believe that Babylon the Great refers to some kind of worldwide false religion. So Babylon the Great, or this great prostitute, is referring to a worldwide false religion. It's an anti-Christian religion that is global in scope, and it continues to lead people away from God. Instead of worshiping God, this false religion will eventually get people to worship the beast and the idol of the beast, the image of the beast. Getting back to verse 2 of Revelation 17, John said that the peoples of the earth were intoxicated with her adulteries. In other words, that the people are willing and eagerly following this false religion. They're following for the lies. Now, these tribulations have been so terrible that even though they're rejecting God, they need something to cling to, something to give them hope. And so they are drawn to this false religion, which leads them to worship the beast, worship the image of the beast. Verse 2 also says that this will include kings as well as the dwellers of the earth. So this worldwide religion will be followed by kings and presidents and dictators, all of the leaders of the countries, the nations at that time, as well as just common everyday folk. It'll truly be a worldwide religion leading all of those who are still on the earth astray, leading them to follow the beast. The reason so many people
are ready to accept the lie of this false religion is because they've already abandoned the truth of God. They have already decided that they're not going to follow God. They abandon the truth. And you know the old saying, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And these people are going to be led astray by the lies because they've rejected the truth. Continuing in Revelation 17, verses 3 through 6. Revelation 17, verses 3 through 6. And he carried me away in the Spirit into a wilderness. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead was written a name of mystery, Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes and of earth's abominations. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I marveled greatly. So this woman that John saw has the description, mother of prostitutes and the earth's abominations, written on her forehead. And that title is symbolic of somebody who, showing that this false religion is the source of the immorality, the source of people rejecting God. Out of this false religion came all of the people, all of the reason behind people rejecting God. They have been involved in all of the spiritual adultery, if you will, came about from this woman that represents Babylon the Great. So this religion will be the source of a lot of the persecution against God's people as well. Not only are they the source of leading people away from God, but they are the source of persecuting those who refuse to follow their worldwide religion and try to keep following God. They will lead the persecution. Verse 6 says that she was drunk with the blood of the saints, the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. Right? She was drunk on their blood. She savored it. She enjoyed consuming it. She persecutes Christians. Anybody who doesn't follow this worldwide religion is going to be persecuted. Those Christians who want to continue to follow God are going to be persecuted. Millions of Christians have been martyred already, in our day. And there are going to be many more millions will be martyred during this time that Revelation is revealing to us. And this one world religion will be a big part of that persecution. False religions aren't content with just leading people away from God and to their beliefs. No, they can't just accept that. They have to then persecute anyone who doesn't follow them. Right? If you don't believe the way I do, I'm going to persecute you. I'm going to make you pay. I'm going to force you to either follow me or I'm going to kill you. We see that going on. These false religions don't agree with freedom of religion. They don't want you to choose your own religion. You either follow their religion or you're going to pay a price for it. We've seen that throughout the centuries. We've seen the persecution of Christians when Christianity first began. In Rome with Christians being fed to the lions, with Christians being used as torches in Nero's garden, all throughout history, even up to today, where Christians are being persecuted simply because they're Christians. And they won't follow the religion of the leaders of these countries and these tribes that are persecuting them. The great prostitute didn't merely lead people away from the Lord. Those who remain faithful to the Lord, she gets drunk on their blood, right? She kills them. She is going to persecute Christians. She's drunk on their blood. And what this brings to mind for me, if you look at today's environment, I think of some of the actions today of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, the Muslim Brotherhood, Boko Haram in Nigeria. That's most recently in the news, all of the Christian persecution going on in Nigeria, and many, many other Islamic-influenced countries where these groups are attacking Christians because they won't convert to Islam. So in a sense, today's horrific Islamic terrorist groups may very well be the beginning of this worldwide religion that we're reading in Revelation. Don't know for sure, but that's one of the thoughts, the common thoughts. And we can see that kind of mindset even going on in our country today. That the idea that you either follow my way or death, right? You have to think the way I think, or else I'm going to reject you, I'm going to persecute you, I'm going to kill you. There's extreme people who don't tolerate anybody who has an opinion other than their own. And we've seen the whole cancel culture going on the past few years, and how people were ridiculed for disagreeing with some other line of thought. And it's led to persecution. It's led to attempted assassinations and even real assassinations. If you just look at what happened to Charlie Kirk. He was assassinated because of his beliefs, and people that didn't like those beliefs didn't want to hear it, so they took him out. So it's a small step from that disagreeing of ideas, not being able to agree to get along, agree to disagree. We no longer can agree to disagree. And there's some factions that if you don't think the way I think, then you're dead to me. Right, and they may literally do it. They'll try to cancel you. They'll try to get you off of social media. They'll try to get you fired from your job, and they may even try to kill you. It's a small step from that attitude to the attitude of, if you don't follow this world religion, then you're dead. And I could see Christians becoming the number one item on the hit list, because Christians are not following this world religion. They're not following the beast. And it doesn't take much of a step from what we're seeing in the world today to get to that point. Or even in our country, Christians are attacked. We see it in Muslim nations all around the world all the time, where entire tribes of people, Christian tribes, are wiped out because they won't convert to Islam. All right, let's jump back up to verse 3. In verse 3, along with the great prostitute, another important character is introduced. John says that the great prostitute is sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names, and it had 7 heads and 10 horns. Where have we heard that before? We've heard that description before, right? A couple times we've heard that. But first, let's talk about the fact that the great prostitute is sitting on this beast. It represents something. This is point number 2 on your outline. This represents that the false world religion will be supported by the Antichrist. Right? She's sitting on it. She's being supported by the beast, the Antichrist. So the false world religion will be supported by the Antichrist. They will work in partnership. Right? The world religion will be supported by and partnered with the beast, the Antichrist, to take over the world, basically. But as we'll see in a little bit, only for a short time that this partnership will last, just long enough to meet the needs of the beast, and then we'll see what happens here in a little bit. Verse 3 says that the beast has 7 heads and 10 horns. There's some misconception that can come about in this, because we've heard that description a couple other times in Revelation. First time we heard it was in Revelation chapter 12, when John said that another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, the great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his head 7 diadems. And we talked about how that red dragon represented Satan. But then in chapter 13, he said it saw a similar thing. He said, I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, and with 10 diadems on its horns, and blasphemous names on its heads. So that description can apply to Satan or it can apply to the Antichrist. And I think it's pretty clear the way it's worded that it's referring to the Antichrist. But some people argue both ways. If you look at it, Satan is depicted as a dragon. And John didn't say, I saw a dragon, a scarlet dragon or a red dragon. He said, I saw a scarlet beast. And the beast in chapter 13, when he described the beast, it had those blasphemous names written on it. So it's pretty clear that it is the beast, the Antichrist, that the woman is sitting on. But if you think about it, we've mentioned all throughout this study that Satan just has a way of imitating God, imitating God's way, trying to imitate God's plan to lead people away from God. And one of the things we talked about is God is part of the Holy Trinity, God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Well, Satan has formed this unholy Trinity where Satan is in the place of God, the beast is in the place of Jesus, and the false prophet is in the place of the Holy Spirit. Well, if you look at when Jesus was here, Jesus was God in bodily form. And Jesus said, when you see me, you've seen the Father. Well, if you take that now into the unholy Trinity, you can almost hear the beast saying, well, I am Satan in human form, because Satan is a spiritual being. Right? They're two separate beings. Satan is a spiritual being, a fallen angel. The beast is a human being. Right? We talked about that when he first appeared in chapter 13, that the beast, the Antichrist, is a human. And so I can see the beast saying, well, I am Satan in the flesh, if you will. Like Jesus is God in the flesh, the beast is Satan in the flesh. So it makes sense that they would look alike, right? They have the imagery of the 7 heads and the 10 kingdoms. Plus, Satan has given all his power to the beast. So the beast is carrying out Satan's bidding. So they are unified in purpose, if you will. And we'll see here in a little bit what the 7 heads and the 10 horns mean, and it fits within Satan's purpose, even though it's literally the beast that John is talking about. So hopefully I cleared that up and didn't muddy the waters worse than it was. All right, let's continue looking at what else John says about the beast here. Revelation 17, verses 7 and 8. Revelation 17, verses 7 and 8. But the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. All right, so we've talked about in Sunday school, we look for repeating phrases. That phrase, the beast that was and is not and is to come, is repeated here twice, so it has some significance. And what it sounds like is that the beast was alive, and then it died, and then it came back to life. Right? It was resurrected. But if you remember back in chapter 13, and we discussed this kind of at length in our Wednesday night study, that it said that the beast seemed to have a fatal wound. And we talked about, well, did it really die, or was it just looking like it died? And we had a little bit of disagreement during our discussions, but I'm going to stand by what I taught that night, that it seems, I'm saying that the false prophet is going to convince people that the beast suffered a fatal wound and died and was resurrected. And again, trying to imitate God's plan, trying to imitate the Holy Trinity, what does this look like? It looks like Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. So they're trying to deflect attention away from God, away from Jesus, and say, look, this beast that you're following, it died, but it has miraculously risen again, to draw people to worship the beast rather than to worship God. And the world will marvel because they think that it has come back to life. All right, continuing verses 9 through 11. Revelation 17, verses 9 through 11. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come. And when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. So here's a little confusing wording here. What's going on here? The beast has 7 heads, and this first, John is told that this represents 7 mountains where the woman sits. In other words, the woman, the false religion, will have dominion over this area, these 7 mountains, the 7 regions of the earth where this false religion is taken root. It basically is the whole world. But then John is also told that the 7 heads represent kings as well. And he says 5 of the kings have fallen. In other words, these kings existed before John's time of writing this. So 5 prior kingdoms. One kingdom is, so it's going on at the time that John lived, and then the one more is yet to come. It's a future king. Well, most Bible commentators believe that the 5 past kings represent the largest and most powerful of the world empires prior to John's day, and that would be Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persian, and Greece. And then the king who is, of course, the ruling empire at the time of John's writing would have been Caesar or the Roman Empire. So that's 6 of the 7 kingdoms that are referred to. Then there is going to be a future king. And that, of course, will be the Antichrist. But what's different is he will reign for a little while with the 10 kings. And we'll see that when we talk about the horns. There are going to be 10 other kings who rule with him, but then they will turn over full control to the beast. So that's what it means when it says that he is an 8th, but he belongs to the 7. So that's what's a little confusing. There's 7 kingdoms, and the beast is part of that 7th kingdom, but then when they turn their power over to the beast, he becomes the 8th and final king. So that leads us to point number 3 on your outline. The Antichrist is the 8th king, the one not yet come. The Antichrist is the 8th king, the one not yet come. So that explains the meaning of the 7 heads. Now let's talk about the horns. We've kind of covered it a little bit, but let's get in a little bit more detail. Verses 12 through 14. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour, together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. They will make war on the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those with him are called and chosen and faithful. So the 10 horns, as I mentioned earlier, they represent 10 kings that will be part of that 7th kingdom to come. But John says that they'll only reign for an hour. Of course, we know that's not literally an hour. It just means a short time. They're going to reign for a short time along with the beast. Right? So he's made these alliances, and they're going to fight with him in the last battle of Armageddon. But they're going to love the beast so much that they're just going to relinquish all their authority to the beast. And the beast will become this 8th king, a one world leader with these 10 kingdoms underneath his authority, doing his bidding, fighting with him, alongside of him. All right, let's finish up verses 16 through 18. Revelation 17, verses 16 through 18. And the 10 horns that you saw, they and the beast will hate the prostitute. They will make her desolate and naked and devour her flesh and burn her up with fire. For God has put into their hearts to carry out his purpose by being of one mind in handing over their royal power to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman that you saw is the great city that has dominion over the kings of the earth. So earlier I had mentioned that this one world government for a time, this false religion and this one world government will be partners. They'll work side by side. The beast will use this false religion to do his bidding, to get everyone to reject God and follow the beast. But then once they've served their purpose, the beast and those 10 kings that follow the beast are going to turn on the false religion and going to wipe out that false religion. And John tells us that they're going to do that because that's God's will. That God is going to use the beast and his kings to wipe out the false religion. That the great Babylon who turned people away from God. That's how God is going to pour out his wrath on the great Babylon. He's actually going to use the beast to do his bidding, to carry out that punishment for Babylon the Great. So point number 4 on your outline is, once the false religion has served its purpose, the beast will destroy it. Once the false religion has served its purpose, the beast will destroy it. You know, you've heard the old saying, there's no honor among thieves. Well, it's going to happen here. Evil turns against evil, and the false religion is going to be wiped out. Now, why would the beast want that? Well, the beast wants all of the attention. He wants all the glory. He wants all the worship to go to him, not through another intermediary, some other religion that might get some of the credit, if you will. He wants to wipe it out so that he is now in the position of God. He gets all of the glory, all of the worship. So God's wrath is being worked out. And now it's coming against the false religion that turned people away from God. All that's left now really is the coming battle of Armageddon. Jesus and the battle of Armageddon are going to be coming here real soon in our study. The Antichrist is allowed to rule over the sinful people that are left on the earth, those who have rejected God, serving his self-centered lust for power. And then, once Babylon the Great is destroyed, next is going to come the battle of Armageddon, when those 10 kingdoms join with the beast to go to battle against the Lord. And John tells us that Jesus, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, is going to be victorious over this battle. You know, we already know that Jesus wins in the end, and we're about to get to that part. So we'll see that. And what we should see in all of this is, first of all, the blood of the martyrs is being avenged. You know, God promised that their time would come, that their death, their martyrdom would be avenged, and we're seeing that being carried out. We're also seeing that God is working out his plan. He had a plan from the very beginning of time, and he's working it out. And even though all these bad things are happening, God is in control. And that should bring us peace. Right? We live in a crazy world. And a lot of times it looks like things are out of control, and it's out of our control a lot of times, but we should have peace in knowing that God is in control. We may not be able to handle or control what's going on, but God knows about it. He is in control, and that should bring us all of us believers in Jesus, that should bring us peace and help us to get through the difficult times in this crazy world that we face.